Oh, baby. Welcome back to another episode of OC and TJ. It is your boy, OC. We're back with another Week 12 episode. We got another week of picks, and we got another pick of me rambling on for another hour or two. So, hope you all enjoyed your week so far. We're 1 week away from Thanksgiving. Literally a week from today will be the day where we sit around, be thankful for our loved ones and our families. We eat a bunch of turkey, mashed potatoes, mac and cheese, and you know what? Here and there, we'll watch a little bit of football. So, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Let's jump right into the show. Now, before we get into the picks with Week 12, we got to break down one breaking news headline because the Jets are on a bye week. They fired their general manager, Joe Douglas, after a 28-27 loss to the Indianapolis Colts. Just when I thought that New York was out of scapegoats, I forgot Joe Douglas was still employed. So, I'll just talk about that right now. When I found out that Robert Saleh got fired after Week 5, I only knew it was going to be a matter of time before Joe Douglas would, because he was the one that traded for Aaron Rodgers. He made all the moves to make sure that Rodgers was satisfied and convenient. But at the same time, I feel like, listen, he made a lot of great acquisitions. He drafted Sauce Gardner. He drafted Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Michael Carter Jr., Jermaine Johnson. He inked Quentin Williams to being one of the highest paid defensive tackles in football. But at the same time, they hired Nathaniel Hackett to be the offensive coordinator. They didn't give Aaron Rodgers the best offensive line in his first year with the team, which is why he tore his Achilles just 4 snaps into the first game of the season against Buffalo. And then this year, it just felt like they weren't making moves to help the team get better. It was making sure that Rodgers was happy. It's the reason why Allen Lazard was the second option. It's why Mike Williams got traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's why they brought in Devontae Adams, his best friend from Green Bay. It's why they fired the head coach. It's why they demoted Nathaniel Hackett for Todd Downing. And now Joe Douglas is paying the price because he pretty much essentially let Aaron Rodgers manipulate him into making the decision that he thought was best for him, not for the team. So, honestly, I'm not too surprised that this happened. I hate that, Joe Douglas was the latest to go because at the same time, he did make a lot of great moves on the defensive side and a couple here and there on offense. But A, he whiffed on the quarterback, and B, the win-loss record is just atrocious. I mean, he kept Adam Gase around for too long and let him ruin the development of Sam Darnold. Then he drafted a huge bust in Zach Wilson and didn't give him too much to work with. And now you made a regrettable investment with Aaron Rodgers. So he's going to get another job eventually. I don't know if it's going to be as a general manager or if it's just like an executive assistant. But the interim guy for the Jets is, hold on, let me look this up. Phil Savage. Oh, God. The former Browns GM, who was more known for cursing out a fan in an email than he was for winning football games. The Jets think this guy was qualified? Dear God. Does nobody understand why people even take this team seriously anymore? I mean, every offseason, they always make the big, sexy moves that look good in theory, but then they completely backfire and blow up in their face. Le'Veon Bell, Corey Davis, Aaron Rodgers, who else am I thinking of off the top of my head? Tremaine Johnson. What else? Sam Darnold. Teddy Bridgewater. I can't really think of this stuff off the top of my head. But the point is, every offseason, they always try to make themselves an attractable commodity. And then, for some inexplicable reason, either they backfire completely or the team does not do anything to make sure that they reach their potential. And spot on with this comment. The Jets are a poverty franchise, and it was a good move to fire the GM. You have the Bears as a backwards organization. You got the Jets. You got the Panthers. Really, if there are two teams that should be at the top, it's Chicago and the Jets, because time and time again, even though they do have a Lombardi trophy that they can brag about, it's been way too long since they've won it. And since then, they've been an absolute laughingstock. And the Jets are due for an imminent blow-up yet again. Thank goodness that they're heading into a bye week, because I think we're all sick and tired of them seeing completely implode. And I'll talk about their loss against the Colts later on, but this is literally the situation that the Jets were trying to avoid just a few years ago when they brought in Robert Saleh and when they kept Joe Douglas and when they tried to, put this team back on the map. And now you're just in a situation where Aaron Rodgers might not be back with the team next year. They're looking for another head coach and a general manager yet again for roughly the fourth or fifth time now in the last 5-10 seasons. They're just a joke now. They're a poverty franchise. And you know what? It's just, as a Patriots fan, I mean, I'm a little bit happy about it, but at the same time, it's just like they cannot get out of their own way. It's depressing. It really, really is. But having said all of that, let's get into Thursday Night Football between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. This guy has some hot takes. Browns tonight to win along with the Ravens to win by 20+. Yeah, Cleveland is definitely in a position to kind of make some noise because Jameis Winston did throw for close to 400 yards and 2 touchdown passes, but at the same time, they only scored 14 points, and they set themselves back at the start of the game and, mainly in the second half. So, I mean, they turned it over on 4th and 1 at the 50 with the run up the gut that got stuffed. Then they failed on the 2-point conversion when Jerry Jeudy scored an 89-yard touchdown to start the first quarter, or on their second drive of the game, I should say. And then after Cleveland tied it up in the third quarter with the touchdown to Elijah Moore and then the 2-point conversion pass to David Njoku, they failed to get on the board for the rest of the game, and they only had 90 more yards of offense. And more importantly, on the other side of the ball, they had no answers for Taysom Hill whatsoever. Zero. Because he was the single reason why the Saints won by as many points as they did on Sunday afternoon. He had 138 yards on the ground, 50 yards as a receiver, 18 yards as a passer, and then 43 as a returner, or 42, I should say. That's 248 total yards from scrimmage that Taysom Hill had against this Cleveland Browns defense. Did I forget to mention that he actually scored 3 of their 5 touchdowns? So, yeah, I mean, the Browns literally had no answers there because not only do you fail to stop the one player that's torching you on the Saints offense, but Cleveland's offense failed to catch up. They were playing from behind. They had those 2 failed conversions that really put them in a bigger hole. And then as soon as they tied the game up in the third quarter, they just fell apart. The special teams gave up a huge punt return to Dante Pettis. Then you had Juwan Johnson get open in the corner of the end zone. You had Hill break for a long touchdown run. And then the offense just predictably shut down. So regardless of how many yards that Jameis Winston had, it comes down to points. And they lost by 21. The Steelers, on the other hand, are coming off another victory against the Baltimore Ravens. And I say another because this is roughly the 4th or 5th time now that Lamar Jackson has gone into a game against the arch rival Pittsburgh Steelers and has flat out shrunk into trying to get a victory here. This is also the 2nd time now that the Steelers offense failed to score a touchdown, yet they still won the game. And it wasn't like they had the worst time moving the football, but when it was time to cash into the end zone, they stalled out time and time again. So the Ravens defense actually showed up for once, yet the offense with the 2-time MVP and the best running back in football failed to catch up and failed to capitalize on their opportunities. The moment that Derrick Henry fumbled the ball away on the second play of the game, I knew that this was going to be one of those days. Yeah, Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals from 46 and 50 yards out. They turned the ball over 3 times. That Henry fumble was the start. Then you had Isaiah Likely cough up the ball deep inside the 10-yard line when they're up 7-6, and it allowed Chris Boswell to give the Steelers a 2-point lead. And then the third one was in the fourth quarter when Pittsburgh gifted you an opportunity to take the lead when Russell Wilson lofted an interception to Marlon Humphrey in the back of the end zone on a drive where they could have gone ahead by double digits, only for Lamar Jackson to throw an interception down the sideline to Peyton Wilson that was both underthrown and ripped away from the rookie linebacker. But even then, Lamar still had enough time. They were only down by 8 points with about a few minutes to go, and he perfectly executed a touchdown drive to cut their deficit to 2, but they experience deja vu. Because if you remember 3 years ago, the Ravens were only down 1, and they wanted to go for 2 in the win. And the pass to Mark Andrews was wide open in the flat. The pass was dropped. The Ravens lost that game. 3 years later, instead of having Lamar Jackson throw the ball or even have Derrick Henry on the football field, who only got 13 carries, mind you, they have Lamar Jackson run a quarterback sweep to the left side, and it was immediately blown up by Joey Porter Jr. Pittsburgh got the ball back. They made the Ravens burn all 3 of their timeouts, and they got the first down they needed to win this game. So this was another standard Pittsburgh victory where they take it down to the wire and make enough plays to hold on at the end. But at the same time, this said more about Baltimore than it really did about Pittsburgh. Steelers offense definitely showed that they're more flawed than expected in their first 3 wins of the season. But listen, Russell Wilson is still undefeated as a starter. George Pickens has emerged as the number 1 option. They can run the ball extremely well. And more importantly, their defense is the second best scoring unit in football. So they are a dangerous team to look out for in the AFC. But I don't know how much longer this type of formula for winning is going to work when it comes to playing in January, when it actually comes to playing in the postseason. They might have the division lead. They might host a playoff game. But there's definitely going to be a team that will try to expose their flaws. And I don't know if it's going to work forever. That's all I'm going to say. But heading into this game, the Pittsburgh Steelers are heavy favorites. They're obviously 8-2. They widen the gap in the AFC North lead, while the Browns are 2-8 and are one of the biggest disappointments in football. Not only has their offense completely fallen apart, but the defense has massively regressed. And Myles Garrett alone cannot bail them out forever. But I actually had a little bit of a hard time picking this one because if you look at this from a historical perspective, since these two teams have gone up against each other in the last decade, I want to say, when Ben Roethlisberger is not on the field at Cleveland, the Browns somehow win. But obviously, some historical trends are bound to end at some point. The Steelers have the second best scoring defense in football, like I said, and the Browns, they're always interesting to me, especially with Jameis Winston, because 1 week he'll play like absolutely play like trash, and then the other week he'll actually have promising numbers. Last week, it obviously didn't work out as well because they lost by 21, and he ended up throwing for close to 400 yards. But given this is a short week, I don't know. I mean, this is not the first time that the Steelers have lost to an inferior team when they were favored by a lot of points to get the job done. But yeah, I'm struggling with this one. Because I know what Jim Schwartz's defense is capable of on any given night, especially against a quarterback like Russell Wilson. But I'm trying to think. I'll go with Pittsburgh for now, but I could definitely be very wrong about this. Something on the back of my mind is telling me that Cleveland is going to pull off this upset, but I'm going to go with my gut. I'm going to go with the Steelers, and I think it'll be really close. I'll say they win 23-20 because, like I said, they haven't had an easy win in who knows how long. So let's move on to the next game between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New York Giants. Both teams are coming off of bye weeks, but the big headline with this one is not only will Mike Evans be back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but the Giants will be starting a new quarterback. That's right. The Daniel Jones era is officially over. Not only is he benched for Tommy DeVito, but he has been demoted to the 4th quarterback on the depth chart. Tommy DeVito 1, Drew Lock 2nd, Tim Boyle 3. So when I first heard this news, I knew it was going to be a performance issue because I didn't even talk about the Giants-Panthers game last week because I forgot that those two were on a bye week when we were last talking about this game. So I apologize for that. But when the Giants lost to the Carolina Panthers 20-17, Daniel Jones threw 2 interceptions. They were down 10-0 at halftime. They were down 17-6 at one point, and it shouldn't have really gone to overtime, but it's the Panthers, so it did. And on the first play of overtime, Tyrone Tracy fumbles the ball deep in a field goal range, and the Panthers didn't even have to run another play because Eddie Pinheiro made the chip shot field goal to win the game. So I knew that from a performance standpoint that Daniel Jones deserved to get benched because clearly this offense has not lived up to expectations. When they drafted Malik Neighbors, when they improved the offensive line, when they got Devin Singletary, when they drafted a few other guys like Tracy and Theo Johnson to try to give Daniel Jones some confidence, but it's still a mess. Andrew Thomas is injured, so that means the O-line is still a wreck. Daniel Jones is underthrowing and overthrowing too many passes at an alarming regularity. They can barely run the football. Malik Neighbors is probably frustrated at this point, even though he knew what type of situation he was heading into. And now the defense only relies on Dexter Lawrence because nobody is talking about the fact that he has 9 sacks as a defensive tackle, that he's one of the top 5 leaders in that category, but they're still one of the worst secondaries in football, and he's the only reason why they even have a pass rush, because Kayvon Thibodeau, Azeez Ojulari, and Brian Burns have not lived up to the hype, and their run defense is god-awful because they let Chuba Hubbard run for over 150 yards on nearly 30 carries. But when I found out that Daniel Jones was being demoted to the 4th quarterback spot, I knew this was a business decision because he's got an injury guarantee for next year. And if he does get injured, he's going to get owed tens of millions of dollars. And obviously they benched him because they didn't want to have to worry about paying them that clause so they can move on from him easier in the offseason. I mean, I have been on record saying that I hate when this stuff happens because it's just pretty much a slap in the face to the guys in the locker room that it's only one guy that was responsible, but at the same time, it is a business. And you know what? When you don't get the production or the results that you want, this is the type of stuff that's going to happen. They're 2-7 right now, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. I'll double check. But still, 2 wins. The point is, everything has gone wrong. Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are on the hot seat right now. And to be quite honest, I can't believe I thought they were doing well at one point, because these last couple of years have shown that they have completely set this team back further than Dave Gettleman ever could. And that's saying a lot. I understand that they made the playoffs a couple of years ago and they won, but just because they have one playoff victory against the Vikings team that was 12-5 and had barely escaped all their victories doesn't mean that you prioritize a mediocre quarterback at best for an all-pro running back that is thriving with a division rival right now, and they're paying the price for it. That contract extension should never have been given in the first place, and to be quite honest, I don't even know what you're going to get in return for Daniel Jones. You're going to get what? A 6th, a 5th, maybe a 4th, and that's a big maybe because you know what you're getting with Daniel Jones, but yeah, it's just, they're 2-8. I'm sorry, but you know what I mean. Change has to come, and it's finally happening right after the bye week. But unfortunately, they're not in the best situation because they're going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that is A, finally getting healthy, and B, that is trying to do the same thing that they did last year, which is make a late playoff push. I'm going to go with the Bucs. I'm not insanely thrilled with their defense because they're flat out awful against the pass, and they haven't been that great against the run. But we know what Baker Mayfield is capable of on any given day. Bucky Irving, he's emerging as one of the best rookie running backs in the league, probably the best rookie running back, and already a household favorite in the Tampa Bay community. And more importantly, you're getting Mike Evans back. So you finally have your number one option that is a game changer and can open up so many opportunities for the rest of the guys on their field. And Tristan Wirfs will be fully healthy on the offensive line. He was obviously limited in practice yesterday, but hopefully he'll be able to come back. So I will pick the Bucs to win. I'll say they win 30-10. All right, now we move on to the next game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Carolina Panthers. It finally happened. The Kansas City Chiefs lost the game for the first time against the Buffalo Bills. They put up a strong fight, but they made too many mistakes at the end, or throughout the entire afternoon, I should say. Patrick Mahomes threw an interception on his first pass attempt. That allowed the Bills to score their first touchdown of the game, and that really cost them in more ways than one, because if that pick does not happen, Kansas City would most likely be playing from ahead and not Buffalo. but that wasn't even the worst part. Patrick Mahomes, he threw 3 touchdown passes. I'll give him credit for that, and it's kind of expected because you got the 2 best quarterbacks in football going against one another. But he also only threw for 196 yards on 23 completions. Travis Kelce caught just 2 passes for 8 yards. DeAndre Hopkins, 3 catches, 29 yards. And after a phenomenal performance from Xavier Worthy in the first 30 minutes, he had 0 catches in the whole second half. And the biggest reason why the Chiefs lost, more than the late interception that sealed the deal, was the fact that their defense had no answers for Josh Allen. He threw for 262 yards, ran for an extra 55. That's, if I do the math correctly, 317 of Buffalo's 366 total yards of offense. And anytime you thought that the Chiefs could catch up and take the lead, they were never able to get it. They had one big advantage in the second quarter after Josh Allen threw a questionable interception to Jamari Conner on 4th and 3. But Josh Allen still did enough to drive his team into field goal range at halftime. Thankfully, Tyler Bass didn't miss an easy chip shot like he's done so far this season. And you know what? When it was time for the Chiefs to get back into a rhythm in the second half, they fell flat, and the Bills were able to pull away by as much as 9 points. So, again, the Chiefs put up a strong fight. They did their best to try to keep up, even if their best players didn't show up, especially the quarterback. But at the same time, I mean, Buffalo wanted it more. Josh Allen was the best player on the field, and their defense had answers for the best quarterback in football, while Kansas City's defense knew what the test was, and they completely failed to stop the one player they needed to in order to win this football game and in order for them to keep their undefeated season alive. But the good news for the 1972 Miami Dolphins is that they are still the only team to finish an entire season undefeated. So kudos to them. But I think they'll be fine. This should be a bounce-back game for them. I don't really need to go into it. I know that the Panthers are going into back-to-back wins, or coming off of back-to-back wins, I should say, but it's against the freaking New Orleans Saints and the New York Giants. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. If they somehow inexplicably win, we'll all be pleasantly surprised, but I think that'll show a lot more red flags about Kansas City than anything. But I doubt that'll happen. I think the Chiefs should win easily, and it'll be 40-10. The only touchdown that Carolina will score will probably be at the start of the game or in garbage time. There we go. Now we move on to an NFC East matchup between the Washington Commanders and the Dallas Cowboys. Both are coming off of pretty ugly defeats, I should say. Both on primetime television, mind you. The Washington Commanders lost to the Philadelphia Eagles 26-18, while the Cowboys once again got blown out on their home field, this time 34-10 against the Houston Texans. So I'll start with Washington because their defeat was at least a little more respectable, but they still fell flat and they still did not have a strong game. For the first 45 minutes, it was a defensive clinic, and they actually had a 4-point lead heading into the fourth quarter. You know, their defense didn't give up a single touchdown through 45 minutes. Jake Elliott missed 2 field goals, so that allowed the Commanders to kind of play from ahead and make sure that they didn't fall behind early on. But even though they scored the only touchdown in the first half on the second drive of the game, thanks to Brian Robinson, they stalled out for the rest of the night, and they couldn't run the ball once again. They pretty much dared the Eagles dared Jaden Daniels to beat him by himself, and that unfortunately caused Washington's offense to go one-dimensional. And that is a trend that we've seen time and time again. When they can't run the football well, they completely shrink. I actually have the notes right here if I could pull them up quickly, because I'm not even joking here. When they win, in their 7 wins this year, they've averaged 184 rushing yards a game. When they lose, 93 yards on the ground. So again, unless they could run the football, the offense is only going to stall out on numerous drives, and that's going to put even more pressure on their defense to get a stop. And when the Eagles finally got in the end zone to start the fourth quarter, it felt like the momentum completely shifted. But Jaden Daniels finally got his poise back. He marched his team down the field, well into Eagles territory, but they faced a 4th down and 2. at the 26-yard line. You could either kick the field goal to take the lead, or you could go for it and risk the Eagles getting the ball back and trot your already exhausted defense back out onto the football field. And they decide to go for it. They take the gamble. And the minute the ball was snapped, it was an absolute disaster. I'm literally leaning back on my chair saying, what are you doing? Because, excuse me, not only does Jaden Daniels bobble the snap, but he then rolls out to the right to nowhere. I did not see anybody open. There were no running lanes available. The Eagles were not fooled by it whatsoever, and Daniels was forced to take the tackle for a loss. And then on the next three drives, the Eagles blew this game out of the park because, boom, Saquon Barkley, 23-yard touchdown. Next drive, literally the next play, Jaden Daniels, interception to Reed Blankenship. 2 plays later, 39-yard touchdown by Saquon Barkley. Now it's 26-10, and by the time that Washington finally got back into the end zone, it was too little too late because it literally came with 28 seconds left on the clock. So Washington is coming off another pathetic defeat. It feels like we're experiencing deja vu because this is not the first time that we've seen a Cliff Kingsbury or a Dan Quinn coach team start off strong, only for them to fall apart towards the end of the year and for them to get bounced out or for them to get eliminated from playoff contention in embarrassing fashion. But at least they're doing better than the Cowboys because they got freaking trucked. I have no idea why I thought the Cowboys could actually win this game. Maybe it was because I was really unimpressed with the Texans offense, but first play of the game, Nico Collins on a screen, takes it 77 yards to the house. And if it wasn't for yet another Laramie Tunsil penalty, I would have just given up. But it didn't even matter because Joe Mixon broke a long touchdown himself from 45 yards. And then Mike McCarthy decides to fake a punt again at his own 33-yard line with this punter floating a pass over the middle to a receiver that got completely leveled. But then C.J. Stroud threw an interception on a 4th down himself to Malik Hooker. And then Kavontae Turpin broke into the house from 65 yards away. And I thought, okay, you're only down by 7 at halftime. Your offense has a little bit of a spark. Your defense has finally calmed down a bit. They got plenty of momentum. They get the ball to start the second half. All they have to do is not screw it up. But then it was just like, never mind, because Cooper Rush got sacked 5 times. He got strip sacked by Derek Barnett that was recovered for a touchdown. Actually, there were 2 fumbles on that play because not only did the ball get punched out from Cooper Rush, but when the offensive lineman picked it up, he lost the ball. And then Derek Barnett picked it up and ran it back for a touchdown. And then late in the 4th quarter, the Texans offense finally scored a touchdown in the second half. First time in 4 weeks, mind you, with the 3rd touchdown of the night for Joe Mixon. They were up 34-10. Dallas went 0 for 4 on 4th down. And I don't even know what to say anymore. Before the game, there were pieces of debris falling from the roof of the stadium, and that's just been a microcosm of how their season has gone. Jerry Jones after the game said, "Oh, we've been right around the rim. You know, we have the 6th most wins out of any other team in the last 30 years." And I'm thinking to myself, it has come to this for Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys, that they're literally trying to live off the nostalgia and trying to make everybody remember the good times when their team is pathetic. They only have 3 wins. Their quarterback is out for the year. Your offense is completely boring. Your offensive line is injured. Your defense is terrible. Your head coach is 1 foot out the door. And you're freaking deluding yourself into the fact that you're not doing anything wrong. This was the roster that you created, that you actually said to yourself, you know what? I'm going all in with this group, that this is going to be the team that will finally get over the hump. And now you literally have the same record as the New York Giants. And you only have 1 more win than the Browns or the Jaguars. This is what you're content with? So heading into this game, Washington should win in a blowout. The Cowboys already lost this game by announcing that they were going to start Cooper Rush for another week. I don't care if Jaden Daniels is banged up or that Jonathan Allen is still out for the year or that Terry McLaurin only caught one pass last week. If Washington doesn't win this game, then we have bigger problems that we need to address. So Washington wins 37-3. How about them Cowboys? Moving on. I'm so freaking mad right now. And I'm not even a Cowboys fan. This is how infuriating this season has gone for them. Do you realize that this is now the 6th straight game at home where they've been absolutely demolished? When you count it back to last year against the Packers in the wild card, you lost to a Saints team that proceeded to go on a 7-game losing streak after that 44-19 debacle. Then you lose to Baltimore by trailing 28-6 before you nearly come back and literally pad your stats in the fourth quarter. Then you get blown out by, Philadelphia. You get blown out by Detroit. You got blown out by Houston. And I obviously know I got the order wrong, but case in point, your team is flat out garbage. And the Commanders, even though they've been struggling over the last 2 weeks, they actually have a quarterback they can rely upon. Dan Quinn is actually promoting a winning culture. They can run the ball. Their defense plays with a sense of attitude and purpose. The Cowboys just flat out quit. They're giving up. You can just see the body language on the sideline and all the players saying, you know what, this season's a wash. We have nothing else to play for. Let's just unload the rest of the roster because we are officially looking forward to next year. But let's move on to the next game. We got the Miami Dolphins versus the New England Patriots in Miami. Oh, boy. If you're a Patriots fan and you see this matchup, you know this is going to be an infuriating and agonizing loss. For as long as I've been alive, anytime that the Patriots have had to play the Dolphins in Miami, it usually ends in a loss. There have been exceptions. 2019, 43-0, when they forced Fitzmagic to throw 2 interceptions. Or, right? Was it 2 interceptions? Doesn't matter. Point is, they win 43-0. 2011, Wes Welker catches a 99-yard touchdown. They win that game by double digits. 2010, they win 41-14. 2003, you had the Troy Brown touchdown in overtime to win it, 19-13. So there have been exceptions. But other than that, you can remember 2004, when they lose to freaking A.J. Feely and a 4-12 Dolphins team when you're 14-2 and you're on pace to win your 3rd Super Bowl in 4 years. There's 2006, when you're going up against Nick Saban and you have a chance to win the division and the Dolphins are not really looking towards the playoffs. And you lose 20-0 or 23-0 to Joey Harrington. 2013, you lose to Ryan Tannehill and you throw the game-ending interception to Michael Thomas. 2009, Matt Moore. 2016 or 2017, Jay Cutler. 2018, the Miami Miracle. 2020, you get eliminated from the playoffs for the first time in 12 years to a rookie Tua Tagovailoa. And then since then, you have yet to win a game at Hard Rock Stadium. And the Patriots are coming off a pretty deflating loss to the Los Angeles Rams. Their defense got torched by Matthew Stafford, 295 yards and 4 touchdowns. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp both had over 100 yards, which I don't know why their best cornerback was not guarding either of them for the entire afternoon. But that was besides the point. The offense did pretty well. Drake May threw for over 280 yards and a couple touchdown passes, but he also had 2 costly turnovers that allowed the Rams to play with all the momentum. He got strip sacked in the second quarter when the game was tied, and it allowed the Rams to take a 14-7 lead. And then at the end of the game, he throws the interception to Cameron Kitchens to allow the Rams to run out the clock. And I know that Demario Douglas was not looking for the football, but it was horribly overthrown, and it had no chance of working. Miami, on the other hand, is coming off a convincing victory against the Las Vegas Raiders. Defensively, they let Gardner Minshew make this as close as possible. I think he only punted, once or twice throughout the entire game. But the reason why Miami was able to win by as much as 15 points is because their offense had scored on all but one possession. Just one drive where they didn't score and they didn't even punt. Tua had close to 290 yards and 3 touchdowns. Devon Achane, he had 100 yards from scrimmage. But Jonnu Smith, of all receivers, had 100 yards and 2 touchdowns on just 6 catches. They were 8 for 12 on third down. They had 25 first downs. And the more that the Raiders try to keep up, the more successful the Dolphins offense was. And in the final 3 minutes, when Gardner Minshew had a chance to keep his foot on the gas, he threw the ending interception to Jalen Ramsey, and Miami was able to pull away. So it showed a lot more flaws about the Dolphins defense, even though it has been injured over the last few weeks. But heading into this game against New England, I feel like this is their opportunity to bounce back. After they stunned everybody by beating the Rams on Monday Night Football, I knew that they were going to begin to go on a bit of a run to try to save their season from the brink of destruction. And now that they're going up against the Patriots at home, a division rival in which they haven't been able to win in that stadium and who knows how long, yeah, this is a perfect win for Miami. And I'm actually going to be at this game. So, honestly, I would hope that things would change around. But regardless of how Drake May plays, whether it's good or bad, the Dolphins just have a more dynamic offense. We know that New England's offense can try to keep up, but Miami's defense has an abundance of playmakers. You still got Jalen Ramsey. You've got Javon Holland. Calais Campbell is having a tremendous year in his, 18th season in the league? Somewhere around that mark. But, yeah, I think the Dolphins will win pretty convincingly. I'll say they get it done. I'll say they win 31-17. So pretty much the same score as last year. All right. Now we have the Houston Texans versus the Tennessee Titans. Houston is coming off a 34-10 victory against the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, the defense finished with 5 sacks. Joe Mixon had 3 touchdowns, but it still wasn't as promising or as convincing as I thought it would be because C.J. Stroud didn't have a single touchdown pass. He had that horrible interception of Malik Hooker on the second drive of the game, and I get that Nico Collins and Tank Dell were finally back on the field together, so that was a great sign. But 4 for 12 on third down. They finally were able to score a touchdown in the second half in 4 weeks, so that was a promising sign. But something tells me that this is going to be a trap game against Tennessee. And this is at home, mind you. Because even though the Titans lost by double digits to the Minnesota Vikings, they at least showed some fight in this game. Sure, Will Levis got sacked 5 times, and he threw the game-ending interception to Harrison Smith. But he still had 295 yards passing, including a 98-yard touchdown to Nick Westbrook-Ikhine down the sideline. But the problem that held Tennessee back was the amount of penalties they committed because they looked so horribly undisciplined. 13 penalties for, I think, 98 yards, if I'm not mistaken. 13 penalties for 91 yards. And a good amount were called on both sides. I get that there were a couple that shouldn't have been thrown in the first place, but the fact that they were able to reach that double-digit mark just shows that they were not prepared to win this football game. Sam Darnold scored 3 touchdowns. They did stall out a bit in the fourth quarter, but the Titans offense failed to capitalize on those opportunities. And not only did they get sacked on fourth down in one drive, but that interception took place on the final one. And that's why they lost by 10 points. But I think this will be a relatively close and competitive game. Obviously, the Texans have the better quarterback. They have the better defense. They have the better coach. But this is going to be really ugly. I think we're going to see a lot of penalties. I think we're going to see a lot of punts. But the only reason why I'm going to pick the Houston Texans to barely come out with this win is because I trust C.J. Stroud way more than I do Will Levis. And I have a little bit more faith in their defense. I think it'll be low scoring. I'm not expecting too much efficiency from their offense. But at home, I think Houston should do enough to get it done, even if it's by the skin of their teeth yet again. So give me Houston 16-13. And I could be very wrong with this one because we never know how division rivalry games could end up. Heck, the Patriots might win, but I'm not going to completely throw all my eggs into one basket there. Now we move on to the Detroit Lions versus the Indianapolis Colts. Hold on one second. Just got to get this out of the way because my phone popped up. Indianapolis is coming off a very impressive victory against the Detroit Lions. or against the New York Jets. I'm sorry, I'm losing my focus right now. They're coming off a 28-27 victory against the New York Jets. And honestly, through the first 28 minutes, it looked like it was going to be a blowout because they didn't give up a single first down on the first 5 drives of the game. They were up 13-0. But then as soon as New York finally picked up a first down, it looked like the Jets were going to get back into this game. And sure enough, right before the halftime, the Jets got into the end zone thanks to a long touchdown catch by Breece Hall, or a long catch and run, I should say. And then the script completely flipped. You know, the Jets go boom, boom, boom to start the second half, thanks to a strip sack from Anthony Richardson and by Javon Kinlaw. And the Jets were able to lead by as much as 8 points. And I'm thinking, okay, this game is now turning into what I thought it was going to be. It was just a tad late. But Anthony Richardson made the most out of his second opportunity. You know, he got benched a couple weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. He was 9 for 30 against the Houston Texans. And now, or 5 for 30 against the Houston Texans. And now that he got a second chance to kind of revive his career and to improve his stock, he made sure that this team was not going to suffer another ugly and gruesome defeat yet again. Because he led 2 incredibly clutch touchdown drives in the fourth quarter, one to give them the lead, and then the defense came up with the 2 biggest stops of the game. You know, they forced the Jets to kick a field goal down 24-22 to make it a 5-point game. And then on the final drive, with 45 seconds left, they sacked Aaron Rodgers twice, and they forced the Jets to run out of time. So this game was all about Anthony Richardson. He was completely clutch. He rose up in the biggest moments. And honestly, I'm really happy for him because, you know, again, when you get benched, it really demoralizes you and it ruins your confidence, but it only made him stronger. And when he got back onto the field, he made all those critics pay for all the negative things they said about him. And you know what? They have a lot of momentum heading into this game, but the problem is, this is the Detroit Lions we're talking about. They are coming off a drubbing against the Jacksonville Jaguars, 52-6. I don't really want to waste my time too much about it. I'm just going to bring up some of the numbers here. 645 total yards of offense, nearly 40 first downs, 7 straight touchdown drives, a perfect passer rating from Jared Goff, 11 catches for 161 yards for Amon-Ra St. Brown, 144 rushing yards. Jameson Williams had 124 yards on just 4 catches. The Jaguars only had 170 total yards of offense. They picked up 10 first downs, and they only scored 6 points off of 2 field goals. It was literally like Mac Jones was experiencing deja vu from his only playoff start against the Buffalo Bills just 2 years ago. So we all knew it was going to be a mismatch, and that is exactly what we got. It was just a quite literal perfection, or quite literally a perfect performance from the Detroit Lions here. And honestly, I don't know what could stop the Lions in this game. I think it'll be a little closer than it was last week, but listen, the Lions are just the best team in football right now. Their offense is the best in the league. Their defense has not lost a single game since Aiden Hutchinson has been injured. They're finally getting Zadarius Smith into the mix, and he's finally getting adjusted to the scheme that Aaron Glenn wants to run. And listen, as much hope as I have for Anthony Richardson, it's just, I feel like the lust and the magic, I think it's going to wear off eventually. So I'll say the Lions win pretty convincingly, but I think it'll be scrappy from time to time. But I'll still say the Lions win 30-20. All right. Now we move on to the Vikings versus the Bears. I already talked about Minnesota. They handled their business on the road. Sam Darnold had 3 touchdowns. They were a lot better through 45 minutes. They stalled out a bit in the fourth quarter. They only had about, 30-something total yards of offense in that period. But the defense came up with 5 sacks. They only had 1 bad play the whole time, which was that 98-yard throw to Westbrook-Ikhine in the third quarter. And they sealed the deal with the interception by Harrison Smith. So nothing too much to say about that, but the Chicago Bears were literally a blocked field goal away from beating the Green Bay Packers. This is now their 11th straight loss against this division rival. And the Green Bay Packers literally handed them countless chances to try to steal this game. You know, Jordan Love threw an interception near the end of the first half. Then they turned the ball over on downs on their second to last drive in the fourth quarter. But Chicago was still only up by 5 before the 2-minute warning. And Jordan Love was able to lead his team down the field to give the Packers the lead. But the problem was that Caleb Williams had enough time to make magic on his own. You know, Christian Watson had a big day. Josh Jacobs was a pretty effective dual back. And the thing was that Caleb Williams had a lot of time. Not only did he throw for 230 yards through the air, but he also ran for 70 yards on 9 takeoffs. The Packers had no answers for the Chicago Bears running game. Rashad Johnson got in the end zone near the end of the first half. DeAndre Swift had a long 34-yard touchdown to give the Bears the lead in the fourth quarter. But it all came down to that field goal because you had that 4th and 3 conversion to Rome Odunze to make sure you got the yards in the Packers territory. And then Carl Brooks, out of nowhere, gets over the line, gets his hand on the football, and what looked to be a stunning victory for the Chicago Bears just turned into another heartbreaking defeat. And obviously, Matt Eberflus was not going to get fired after that one, but man, this team just cannot get out of their own way. Even when the offense decides to show up, the defense only forces 1 punt. They give up the lead with 2 minutes left, and the special teams makes the one costly mistake that ends up losing it all for them. I think this game will be pretty interesting between Minnesota and Chicago. I think that the Vikings defense is a lot better than Green Bay, so I'm not expecting the Bears offense to completely emerge out of the dust and revive back to life like right away. But I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think both defenses are going to play extremely well because Sam Darnold and Caleb Williams over the last few weeks have been okay at best. And both of them are well coached on defense. Even though Chicago's didn't really do the job on Sunday, I think they're going to do everything they can to try to deliver a convincing victory the following week. But I still think the Vikings will win. I just trust their offense a lot more. They're well better coached. They have more playmakers, and I think they're more disciplined. But I'll say it's relatively close. I'll say they win 20-10. All right. Now we get to the late window between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Denver Broncos. An NFC West or an AFC West battle that will take place for the second time this year. We all know what happened in their last matchup at Mile High Stadium. Both teams were neck and neck. The Raiders were actually winning, but then a 100-yard 6 by Patrick Surtain completely blew the game wide open, and Denver stomped all over their division rival 34-18. Denver is coming off a 38-6 drubbing over the Atlanta Falcons. Bo Nix threw for 300 yards and 4 touchdown passes. The defense gave up just 6 points. They held Kirk Cousins to just 173 yards and an interception while sacking him 3 times. And it really exposed so many flaws with Atlanta's defense. And I'll talk about them in just a second. But let's just get into the preview of this matchup. I think the Broncos will win. I just have a lot more faith in their defense. I think their offense is set up for another promising performance because the Raiders' defense has just been tactically outclassed and overpowered in almost every single game this year. Antonio Pierce, unfortunately, I don't see his window as a head coach lasting too long. He'll definitely get another job as a position coach, but when it comes to the X's and O's as the head coach, as a guy that's supposed to be a strategist, and as a guy that's supposed to come up with the best possible game plans to win week after week, he has not lived up to the hype. And unfortunately, I don't know when they're going to get another win. It could be this week since they are at home, but I'll expect the Broncos to handle their business and go 2 games over 500. I'll say they win 30-13. Next, we have the 49ers and the Green Bay Packers. So the Packers were pretty fortunate that they beat the Chicago Bears yet again for an 11th straight time. But the 49ers are coming off a 2017 defeat to the Seattle Seahawks. And it feels like I've watched the same freaking script again. because this is now the third time where they were in a winnable situation against a supposed inferior division rival, and they completely gagged it away in the final minutes. The same thing happened in Seattle. We knew that the 49ers were not going to be, we're not going to blow them out because the Seahawks were going to do their best to keep this scrappy, but I did not think it was going to come down to the wire like that. Through the first 57 minutes, the 49ers had control of this game. Jawad Jennings had 91 yards on 10 catches. They had a 4-point lead before the 2-minute warning. Geno Smith threw a horrible interception to start the second half. He got sacked 4 times. And after Zach Charbonnet got stuffed on 4th down with about 3 minutes to go, I thought, okay, it's going to be game over. But then Geno Smith happened. He had enough time. He did exactly what he did against the Rams on the final drive of regulation, which was lift the team up and make sure that they did not lose in embarrassing fashion. He picked his way down the field in a short amount of time, but with 12 seconds left, he stepped up in the pocket and took off for the game-winning touchdown. With 12 seconds left, I understand that Nick Bosa got hurt, but again, we've seen this time and time again. I said this last week, the 49ers are not that feared of a team anymore. It just feels like every single week this year, they have been pressing to try to win these football games, and the fears that their Super Bowl window is going to slam shut. And unfortunately, it just keeps creaking every time they fall apart. They're 5-5 now. They're in last place in their division. And if they lose to the Green Bay Packers, you can definitely kiss their Super Bowl hopes goodbye. Unless you somehow imitate the Cleveland Cavaliers and somehow fluke your way to winning another NFC title. That's the only thing I could come up with. But the defense fell apart once again. The offense fell flat at the worst possible time. Brock Purdy only threw for 159 yards with an interception on 21 completions. And I get that George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk were not on the field, but it just shows a lot that when the 49ers offense is not at full strength, that Brock Purdy cannot find a way to win the football game. That's just pretty damning, and that is just me. But that is not an elite quarterback that I would want to trust to take to win a championship with. That's all I'm going to say. So heading into Lambeau Field, the Packers are definitely going to want their revenge because if you remember, these two teams met in the divisional round last year, and the Packers had a fourth quarter lead against them, but they lost by 3 because of 2 unfortunate interceptions by Jordan Love. But I think Green Bay is going to look for vengeance here. Listen, it's going to be an ugly game. I think it's going to come down to the wire. I haven't really been fascinated with either of these teams, especially offensively. But listen, they're at home. You got Jordan Love under center. As long as you don't turn the ball over, I think you're going to be in very good shape. And more importantly, we don't even know what the status of Nick Bosa is going to be because he left the fourth quarter with an oblique injury, or left the second half with one, I should say. I would pick the 49ers on any given day because they just have more talent. But the Packers, listen, they're capable of pulling off some pretty impressive victories against teams that you wouldn't expect from. And more importantly, the 49ers have been prone to losing winnable games time after time. So, I don't know. It could really go either way, but I'm going to go with the home team 23-20. And I could very well be wrong about this because you never know when the 49ers are going to hit their peak once again. So, if George Kittle can come back healthy, then that will be a big plus. But without Nick Bosa, I don't know what their defense can do because their secondary hasn't been that great. And I think Bosa is the only reason why they have a pass rush, him and Leonard Floyd. All right, how many games do we have left? We got 1, 2, and 3. So now we got the Arizona Cardinals versus the Seattle Seahawks. Cardinals are coming off of a bye. Already talked about the Seahawks. Geno Smith led an impressive game-winning drive against the 49ers. We were all impressive. We were all pleasantly surprised with this because this was the 8th. They were on an 8-game losing streak to this division rival. And then when I saw him do the Steph Curry night-night celebration, I was just like, he deserved it. He really did. He wasn't perfect. He had that horrible interception in the third quarter. He got sacked a lot, and it looked like he was going to be dead in the water, but he did not give up. He showed his heart. He showed his fortitude. He showed his poise. And more importantly, he regained all of his composure and lifted the team on his back to a victory. Because if he didn't pull off what he did last week, they would be 4-6 right now, and they would be the ones in last place, not the 49ers. And this game is definitely a must-watch because this could very well be for first place in the division, which is flat out absurd. I mean, Arizona right now is 6-4. The Seahawks are 500. The Rams have the same record as well as the 49ers. This could definitely come down to the final game of the regular season. You know what? Both teams are very opportunistic here. The Cardinals technically have the better defense and they have the better quarterback, but honestly, I want to keep the chaos going. I'm going to pick Seattle here to win this game at home. I think it'll be very close. I'm really excited to see what both quarterbacks can do, but we both know that if either of them turn the ball over at any part of the game, they're going to lose. I don't care what anybody says. You got to hold on to the football or else your momentum is going to fly out of the window. So I'll pick the Seahawks in a very close game, 27-24. And this is another one that could really go either way, but I want this division race to come down to the wire. And if Arizona pulls away, then that's good because honestly, I like what Jonathan Gannon has done as the head coach, and I am more impressed with how Kyler Murray has been able to turn his entire career around in the last couple seasons. So I'm not going to completely hate it, but I just want the trauma to intensify throughout the rest of the season. So now we move on to Sunday Night Football between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Los Angeles Rams. Both are coming off of impressive victories. The Eagles on Thursday night against the Washington Commanders to widen the gap in the NFC East lead, while the Los Angeles Rams handled their business against the Patriots. Defensively, they had their struggles, but they forced 2 turnovers to capture all the momentum, while their offense scored 4 touchdowns. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp both had 100 yards, and Matthew Stafford was responsible for all 4 of those scores. So this is going to be a very, very entertaining Sunday Night Football game. I think both offenses are going to be put to the test here because the Eagles have to make sure they can hold on to the football, and Jalen Hurts is going to be put to the test, while the Rams, on the other hand, they're going up against the best defense in football right now. Statistically, the best defense in football right now. They're top 5 in points allowed. They're giving up the fewest total yards. They're one of the best passing defenses. They're incredibly exceptional against the run. And it just goes to show that they are 10 times better now than what they ever were last season with Sean Desai and Matt Patricia. So both quarterbacks are going to be in the spotlight. Obviously, we know what these offenses are capable of on any given night, and the defenses are going to be under a lot of pressure. But I'm going to pick Philadelphia here for that simple fact that I trust Vic Fangio's unit a lot more than I do with Chris Shula's. They have an opportunistic group with a bunch of guys that can get their hands on the ball, like Kobe Turner and Byron Young and Jared Verse and Braden Fisk and Cameron Kitchens, along with Jalen McCullough. But I think the Philadelphia Eagles know how to shut down your best playmakers, and they know how to take away your biggest strengths. The Rams, they're going to want to get the running game involved early so that they can spread the ball around. That's going to be the key priority for Vic Fangio. Shut down the run and lock up the receivers. And I know that's mainly the strategy for any other defensive coordinator, but the Eagles right now have shown that they've done it better than almost any other defense in football right now. So I'll say the Eagles win in a pretty close game. I think they'll pull away in the fourth quarter, but I still think that they'll win relatively close. For the score, I'll say they win 27-14. Now we get to Monday Night Football, the Harbaugh Bowl for the 3rd time. The last matchup between these two brothers, Super Bowl 47, when the Ravens upended the San Francisco 49ers 34-31 on the night the lights went out in the New Orleans Superdome. Baltimore is coming off another standard defeat in which they blow away a winnable opportunity. The defense actually showed up. They didn't give up a single touchdown, yet the offense turned the ball over 3 times. They committed 12 penalties. They didn't get in the end zone until it was far too late. And when it was time for them to even the score and send it into overtime, you had that disastrous 2-point conversion play in which Lamar Jackson rolled out to his left and went nowhere and went completely sideways. I already talked about the Derrick Henry fumble on the second play of the game. You had Isaiah Likely cough up the ball near the end of the first half that allowed the Pittsburgh Steelers to take the lead at halftime. And then that interception down the sideline. Just 2 plays after Marlon Humphrey gave your team some life, because if the Steelers had found a way to cash in the end zone up 15-10 on third down, they were going to go ahead by double digits, and Baltimore would have had no chance of coming back or making this a relatively close ball game. And it just feels like we've seen this movie too many times before. When the defense shows up, the offense shuts down. When they have winnable games against the teams that they need to beat, they completely squander it away and get away from what works with them. Derrick Henry only had 13 touches. Lamar Jackson completed less than 50% of his passes and barely threw for over 200 yards. There were too many drops. There were a bunch of penalties. There were 3 turnovers. And then you had that 2-point conversion play that ended up costing you the game. But the Los Angeles Chargers are coming off a more hectic victory themselves, because in the first half, it looked like they were going to absolutely humiliate the Cincinnati Bengals. They were up 24-6 at halftime. Not only was Justin Herbert picking them apart with his arm, but he was gashing them with his legs. He took off 4 times in the first half for 58 yards. The defense held Joe Burrow to just 6 points, which were off of 2 field goals from Evan McPherson, and they sacked him 3 times. You had players yelling at the coaches. You had Jermaine Pratt going off on his defense for not showing enough pride and not enough effort. And after taking a 27-6 lead in the middle of the third quarter, it looked like it was going to be game over. But sure enough, Cincinnati, the minute they took the field in the middle of that period, they looked like a completely different football team. And I was definitely more than impressed with the fight that Cincinnati showed. But at the same time, they couldn't get it done, because they weren't all the way back. They scored 21 unanswered points to tie the game up at 27. Joe Burrow threw for 245 yards and 3 touchdown passes in that span, while Justin Herbert had just 7 completions on 19 attempts. It felt like I was watching the wild card game against the Jaguars all over again, when they were up 27-0, where their defense picked off Trevor Lawrence 4 times, and then they blew the game away in completely humiliating fashion to lose 31-30. But when it was time for the Bengals to win the game, they fell flat and pretty much handed the Chargers the victory, because not only did they fail to score a touchdown, but they settled for 2 more field goals for Evan McPherson, and both of them pushed wide to the left. And in the final 2 minutes of the game, Justin Herbert finally said, that's enough. And he found Lai McConkey on 2 big completions for a combined total of 56 yards. And J.K. Dobbins put on the finishing touches with the go-ahead 29-yard touchdown run with 18 seconds left in the game. So the Chargers are coming off a near disastrous defeat in which they choked away a 21-point victory. But the silver lining is the outcome would have been completely different if this was Brandon Staley, if they still had him as their head coach. On Monday Night Football, I don't see this as a big mismatch right here. The Ravens are going to be incredibly desperate for a victory to try to inch closer to the division lead, but they squandered it when they lost to Pittsburgh by 2 points. And now the gap is officially widened. So honestly, I don't know what type of team we're going to see from the Baltimore Ravens, because the defense has been absolutely awful. They lead the league in penalties. They have a 2-time MVP and an outstanding running back, yet somehow, some way, they shut down when you least expected. And you're going up against the Chargers team that is giving up the fewest points in football, that has committed the 4th fewest penalties in football, that has a quarterback with only 1 interception for the season, and an offense that always somehow finds a way to hold on to the football. They don't turn the ball over, and they minimize the mistakes. It's the perfect Harbaugh formula. You run the ball, you don't turn it over, you play outstanding defense, and you let the quarterback make his magic. That's all it takes to win football games. And it might not work against anybody, but against the Baltimore Ravens, I think the Chargers are capable for a very big upset here. I think that, listen, last week exposed a lot of flaws, especially when you're going up against Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But even if Lamar Jackson and the offense have an incredible game, I think Justin Herbert is set up for another fantastic primetime performance. And as long as they don't shut down like they did last week, I think the odds of them pulling off a much-needed win on Monday Night Football are going to go through the roof. So I think we're going to see a great showdown for both offenses. I think it's going to come down to the wire. But I actually would trust Cameron Dicker, the kicker, more than I would with Justin Tucker, because he missed 2 field goals last week. I think that's his 7th miss this year. And he is starting to fall off the cliff rapidly. And this is very alarming because this man is probably the best kicker in NFL history. Actually, he is the best kicker in NFL history. There is no probably. Obviously, you have guys like Adam Vinatieri and Morton Anderson and guys like him. But Justin Tucker, nobody is more accurate than him. Yet he's missing and he's whiffing. And it's just, you don't see it happen often, at least from him. So I'll say the Chargers win 34-31. All right, and that just about wraps it up for another episode. Make sure you like and subscribe for additional content, and leave a comment down below. Who do you think is going to win next week? How do you think your team performed? And how do you think they're going to perform next week, if they even play? Because obviously you have some that are on a bye week. And what do you think about the Jets firing Joe Douglas? Was it a scapegoat, or was it a right decision? Or was it the right decision? I am a little bit of both, because yes, it was a scapegoat move, but at the same time, when you look at the quarterback moves and when you look at the win-loss record, that is going to be very vital for an organization that's been in the basement for years and years and years. And until the Johnson family decides to get their heads out of their butts, then that's all they're going to be, a clown show organization. If I'm Fireman Ed, I would just boycott the rest of the team for the rest of the season, because they're not worth your time, man. I really apologize, but it's just there's no point in having this much pain anymore. It's just not. All right. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. We'll see you next week before Thanksgiving, and have a great rest of your day, everybody. Peace. All right.